I'm joined now by Eizu Uwaoma, founder and MD of Xavier Consulting, to review some of our top stories in greater and intelligent detail. Great to see you. Always enjoy speaking to you, Eizu.
Same here.
Yeah, so I wanted us to start with a story about the assets, the housing complex that was recovered from the former embattled, if you like, CBN governor, 753 units. Now, the government has said it's been handed over to the ministry by the EFCC. It's going to sell it to the public. Yeah. Is that the right way to dispose of this?
Typically, that would have been over tens of billions in valuation. That would have been, but as things change in Nigeria, everything remains the same. It sounds like deja vu.
What do you mean exactly?
From Abacha's loot to Ibori's loot to even Dezani's loot. We know that they will loot the loots, right? So cronies and the issues. So typically, it's the common sense thing to do, but the challenge with that is that these are premium luxury housing, right? Nigeria doesn't have a deficit on premium luxury housing. So we can be more creative.
We have a deficit of affordable housing.
Yes, affordable housing. So yes, so I think there could be more creative way of liquidating that asset without even.
Like what?
Oh, so I'll give you a practical example. You can turn them into monumental assets, right? We need healthcare, right? A little upscaling, a lot of renovations could be mass urban type, let me say tertiary type hospitality brands or even hospitals in itself. So one of the things I think that the government can do better is to be transparent if they must sell. So we're sure that it's not being sold to cronies like we just naturally in the public think of things. I think it's a very strategic point in our history to be able to say, look, for the first time, the loots that were recovered were not relooted or were sold off in the most public way.
So given that we know that there's a major housing deficit, could they not retrofit these buildings and turn them into affordable
Exactly
housing,
my point.
instead of maybe turning them completely into something else, right?
Exactly my point.
Is that not, because you see that
But the challenge with that would be they're in
sector.
upscale areas, right? So you don't want to have public housing in Ikoyi or in Imetama. So that's the challenge there. That's what I would have thought naturally, right? Don't forget that this current government is almost pro-capitalist. If you look at Ikoyi, you find out that all the barracks are going, right, from Ije Barracks to police barrack in Falomo, because they're upscale places. That's what the natural thought would have been. That's why I thought it would be more functional to turn them into the healthcare system, like hospitals and all that, because you don't want certain type of people to live in upscale environments.
Why? What do you mean certain type of people?
I mean, I'm talking about, you know the stands on these things, right?
But you know the interesting thing, I understand what you mean, but part of the problem of our cities is that historically we've been in silos. So you have these urban sprawls, highbrow areas, and next to them you have slums.
So, this is not my thoughts. This is
I know,
how
but you're thinking logically through the issues. But no, I hear you. But I think your point about transparency and how these assets are disposed for is probably as we say, the cocoa of the matter, really.
Absolutely.
That transparency, the public need to be carried along. And we want to hear about the outcome of that process.
Absolutely. And the deja vu, we know the history around this type of things. There's a trend, there's a pattern. So let's hope that they do it right this time.
Fantastic, fantastic. From housing to space, I mean, sometimes when I term these sorts of stories first world problems, because Virgin Galactic is pricing seats for outer space at over $600,000.
Interesting.
So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, innovation and all of that is great, but why did you pick this story? I guess that's a question I should ask you.
So the trajectory is quite interesting. People think it's overpriced. First, they move from $250,000 to $400,000 to $600,000. But if you look at the P&L, they're still running at a loss.
Okay, even at $600,000. Yes. So the question, is it even worth it as a venture? Right,
so there are two perspectives. From a customer perspective, the ultimate high, the ultimate flex as a rich person, right? Don't forget, this is suborbital moves, right? This is not you having extended missions to space. This is not an Apollo 13 or whatever it is. This is just some people who want to spend a few minutes taking aerial pictures out of the world, literally out of the world pictures, and of course, weightlessness. But if you look at it logically, it looks like, that's a very expensive thing to do. But if you look at the other competitors, right? People like SpaceX, people like Boeing, and of course, what's the other one? The one by Amazon. You find out that they're actually cheapest, right? People like Amazon, what you find out is that they're doing over $1 million and they put it on auction. Because don't forget, these are spaceships that don't have more than 6 passenger seats. Right. So there's a threshold to how much you can make, right, on it. So I first of all, I think that it's an ultimate flex, ultimate high. There's a market for it. You know the amount of billionaires you have, but they're still running at a loss. But I hope that as they become more frequent with it, what happens is the economy of scale starts to creep in. With the new type of spaceship they're trying to create, what it means technically is that you can do 2 trips in a week. So you can now pull out your numbers. It's 2 trips in a week at $600,000 $100,000. That's about $3.6 million twice in a week. So it starts to make a lot more sense. With time, that price will come down.
Of course.
But it was really good. It's really good. It's good. It's only people like Elon Musk of this world and the likes of course, Virgin that can pull this type of stunts. But one of the critical things we need to understand is that the human birthplace and the cradle of humans is Earth. Nobody says that we must stay there. So it's good exploration. The dominion mandate of humans is to dominate, and exploration is part of them. Life is one big library. Yeah. Why read one book when you can
I
look
love
at other
how
books?
you're getting philosophical. And I always think of when we ask people, where on earth have you been? A time is coming when we will be asking people, where in space have you been? But to be honest, I think my perspective on this is sort of, yes, of course, it's a trip for rich people, literally a trip for rich people. But it's also what these sorts of expeditions can actually help us achieve in terms of innovation. So the next layer of this is not just travel as an end in itself, but if we're going to pay almost $1 million to go into space, then make it count in a way for humanity. And I think that's a challenge I would give to
mathematics.
Musk and others.
What's funny about it? If the first man didn't step his foot on space, you probably wouldn't have had internet.
Yes, so exactly. That is what I'm saying. That is the bigger picture, but very interesting discussion. Elon Musk says he wants to reduce his political commitments and give more time to Tesla. Their last earnings call didn't go so well. Is he distracted? I mean, what is going on? What is he searching for?
There are three views for this, right? Spectator view, fans who have no interest, people like me and you. And then there's shareholder view of it. And then there's employee view of it. For the employees, the view is different. For that news, for the stakeholders, and of course for spectators. For we, it's a lot of more drama. It's good to listen to the news. Elon Musk is such a good concepts, right? Right, it goes viral all the time. So it's good for we as spectators, spectator sport. But for employees, that means more micromanaging. You see, good founders don't necessarily make good CEOs. That's why I look at Nigerian banks, find out the Nigerian banks prosper when the founders leave and then the real managers come in as
so long
CEOs.
as there's a great succession plan
So
in place,
shareholder, that's important. Diffusion theory, there's something called innovation diffusion theory that talks about 5 phases every industry must go through. All of the industries that Elon Musk is playing on, I think 5 industries, right? Logistics and mobile, that's Tesla X, Neuralink, right? And ChatGPT for AI. And then you look at space travel. You find that they're all early stage industries and they're all oligopolistic. This natural trend of oligopolistic is you need disruption. And he's a natural born disruptor. So that's good news. The problem is for the employees, that's a lot of micromanagers. He's a guy that sends email to everybody, right? And tries to engage everyone. I hope that 5 years also gives the shareholders a chance to have someone job shadow him in terms of COO.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the natural trajectory of things. It's good for him to be there for the disruption he's creating. Hopefully there'll be more adoption in the industry that's in, right? Don't forget alternative energy. He's building very gigantic factories for alternative energy and electrical cars and electrical stuff. So I think that's important. It's pretty good in my own opinion. But let's hope that there's a CEO that will understudy him, sort of like a Steve Jobs Apple style. Steve Jobs created the disruption, but people like Coke created that stability that moved them to $1 trillion business.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if he's giving more time to his businesses, hopefully we see the impact on those businesses. I've got 2 more stories here. Do you have a preference? Dangote, time 100, recognized. He spent, I think it was recognized as time 100's top wealthiest people. And then we have the BDCs and Bureau de Change operators who are struggling to meet the policy directive.
Dangote is very parallel and it's very convergent. That's really good because 100 richest man, 100 richest philanthropists, very in order. What we're not sure of is the impact. I mean, if you put a $1.2 billion, that's what his trust fund is, the ADF. It's got things called the Dangote Foundation or something like that. Aliko Dangote Foundation. If you look at that 1.2 billion and look at the impact on 3 sectors that's in, very minimalist.
You're talking about impact. The guy has spent 20 billion of his money on a refinery that is changing the face. Okay,
yes,
because the impact, you can look at it from the philanthropic side, but you can also look at it from the impact on the economy in terms of transformation.
Absolute genius with the business. But when you talk about the philanthropy, I mean, 1.2 billion, do you realize that if this guy was to really put that in impact, it's bigger than the budget on healthcare? Right, on education.
Sure, I hear you, but to be fair, the Dangote Foundation is doing some good work. Yes, I'm not holding court for Dangote. I'm just trying to balance.
Pretty good work. But if you look at the trust fund and the trust fund itself, that's a 120 billion. We don't have 120 billion impact on your healthcare by a private sector philanthropist. So, but that's by the side. If we move on to the other story, which I think is really important, the BDC one, right? I see what's going on. It's a power play, in my own opinion. If I ask you which region of Nigeria sells suya and sells Bureau de change, you know what it is, right? So, but here's the funny, interesting part about it. You don't need 4,000, 5,000 BDCs in any system, right? You've seen this happen with banks. When they consolidated the bank, I had fewer banks. You had better control, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, it opens a new market, in my own opinion, for digital foreign exchange. It's still very primitive. The fact that you want to exchange dollars and you have to cross the road and you have like so many people dragging you to change your naira to dollars and all that. So I think it's good, right? The sad thing about it is, I think the average threshold is about 35 million to get a BDC license. Then I'm moving it to 2 billion. That's about 5,000%.
A lot of people are going to drop off the
radar.
Yes,
so that's the good
And they're not going to meet the June 3rd deadline. Will they extend that deadline?
No. So here's the good news, right? I've worked with a lot of these institutions, CBN inclusive. One of the things you find out is that the average Nigerian BDC owner owns 3-4 licenses.
Okay.
Right, so they can consolidate.
They can consolidate.
And there's better control. We need an oligopolistic type BDC market, not all these free markets, 5,000 people, half of them are redundant. So I think it's a good move. Shout out to the CBN for that policy. Fantastic.
Eizu Uwaoma of Hexavia Consulting, strategy consultant, management consultant. You have so many titles and you're an economist. Thank you so much. Always insightful and interesting talking to you.